When the courtroom doors opened, no one expected Elon Musk to walk in without a legal team flanking him or a swarm of press trailing behind. But what followed shocked not just the judge, not just the media, but the entire country. What began as a simple fine turned into a moment of reckoning, and what Elon Musk did next would flip the narrative on its head. Make sure to like and subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories that challenge power and expectations. It was a day like any other, at the courthouse, but that was about to change. The room buzzed with anticipation. Reporters whispered to one another, shifting in their seats, waiting for the arrival of the day's most talked-about figure, Elon Musk. Headlines had been circulating for weeks, speculating about what was going to happen during this high-profile court hearing, but no one could have predicted the unfolding drama. Judge Edward Chen, known for his no-nonsense demeanor, sat at the bench, his eyes scanning the legal briefs in front of him. It wasn't just any case. This was a monumental moment. Elon Musk, the billionaire entrepreneur and founder of SpaceX and Tesla, was about to face a hefty fine for actions deemed controversial by the courts. It was a situation that could shake the business world to its core, and everyone was eager to see how it would play out. Elon walked into the courtroom, his demeanor calm, almost too calm for a man facing a fine of $500,000. As the room went silent, all eyes were on him. The media, the lawyers, even the spectators in the back row. They were all waiting for the same thing. How would Elon Musk respond to the looming consequences of his actions? Judge Chen cleared his throat and addressed the court. "Mr. Musk, this fine is not just a financial penalty. It is a message to everyone in the corporate world that no one is above the law." His voice was steady, but there was an underlying tone of condescension, as if the judge was about to deliver a lesson to a student who had failed the class. Elon did not flinch. He simply stood there, hands clasped in front of him, as if he had heard these words 1,000 times before. His face betrayed no emotion, but his mind was working, processing, calculating. Was this just another speed bump in the long road of his empire, or was it the beginning of something bigger? $500,000, Judge Chen continued, for your failure to comply with federal regulations regarding your company's safety violations. Do you have anything to say in your defense? Elon leaned forward slightly, his eyes locking with the judge's. Judge Chen, I'm not here to apologize. I'm here because I believe in the future. I believe in the companies I run, and I believe that innovation sometimes requires bending rules that were never meant to stifle progress. The courtroom gasped. Musk's words weren't just a statement. They were a challenge to the very foundation of the legal system that had already decided his fate before he had even entered the room. Could the law really stop someone like him? Was the system built to hold back progress, or was it simply trying to punish him for his ambition? Judge Chen's face tightened. This isn't about ambition, Mr. Musk. It's about accountability. The law doesn't bend for anyone, not even you. But Elon was not done. His voice grew stronger, more assertive. You're right, Judge. The law is powerful, and I respect it. But the truth is, the law was made by people who weren't thinking about the future we are creating. I am building the future, and sometimes the law lags behind that vision. The judge shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The courtroom was frozen in silence. Was Musk really implying that the law, as it stood, was outdated? Was he challenging the very system that had kept the country in order for centuries? Elon continued, his tone never wavering. I understand the fine. I'll pay it because I'm a man of my word. But this is more than just a fine. This is a statement, and I'll make sure the world hears it. Judge Chen raised an eyebrow. And what statement might that be? Elon smiled, but it wasn't the typical grin of a man trying to be charming. It was a smile of certainty. That the future is unstoppable, and no matter what fines you impose on me, no matter how hard you try to slow me down, we're going to Mars. We're going to make the impossible possible. The courtroom was in a frenzy. Some spectators looked on, with awe, others with disbelief. Was Elon Musk really going to sit there, essentially daring the legal system to punish him, while boldly stating that he was above the very rules that governed it? Was this a man out of control, or was he simply a visionary that the world was struggling to understand? Judge Chen's face remained impassive, but inside, he was recalculating. This was no ordinary defendant. This was a force of nature, a man who could change the world with a single tweet, a single action, and now perhaps with a courtroom speech that would echo through the halls of justice for years to come. The tension was palpable. The world was watching. The question now wasn't whether Elon Musk would pay the fine. It was whether Judge Chen was prepared for what would happen next. The air in the courtroom was thick with uncertainty. Judge Chen sat back, his eyes narrowing as he considered Elon Musk's words. What was it about this man that made him so unyielding, so relentless in his pursuit of his vision? Judge Chen had faced some of the most powerful figures in the country, but none like Musk. None with such an unshakable confidence, a confidence that was, at the moment, both impressive and infuriating. For a moment, the judge contemplated issuing a stern rebuttal. He could tear Musk's argument apart, remind him of the power of the law and how even billionaires weren't above it. But instead, there was something else in the air. A quiet realization dawning on the judge that perhaps Musk was right, at least in part. "Mr. Musk," Judge Chen said, his voice laced with a hint of condescension, "do you honestly expect me to believe that your actions are beyond reproach simply because you're creating the future? The law doesn't care about your ambitions. It's here to ensure that everyone, no matter their influence, plays by the same rules." Musk didn't flinch. He only tilted his head slightly, as if he were considering whether to continue his defense or to let the judge's words sink in. "Judge, I don't expect you to agree with me. I only ask you to think about the bigger picture. What is the law really about? Is it just a set of rules to punish those who don't follow them? Or is it meant to guide us toward progress, toward a better future?" The courtroom was dead silent. Musk wasn't asking for sympathy. He wasn't begging for mercy. He was making a statement. His voice was calm, measured, but the weight of his words hung heavy in the room. Judge Chen, though still determined to maintain control, couldn't help but feel a sense of discomfort. Musk's words echoed in his mind, causing him to question something he'd never truly examined. Was the law truly the guardian of progress, or was it just a system designed to maintain the status quo? He looked around the room at the other legal professionals in attendance, waiting for one of them to offer a response. But no one dared. They knew better than to challenge the authority of a judge. Yet here was Musk, not only challenging the court but the very foundation of the legal system. "Mr. Musk," Judge Chen finally said, his tone shifting from anger to something more cautious, "this is not a place for philosophical debates. This is a courtroom, where facts and laws rule, not visions of what might be." Elon's eyes glinted with a mix of defiance and understanding. "Then let's talk about the facts, Judge. The facts are that my companies are advancing technology at a pace that no one has ever seen before. The facts are that what we're doing will change the course of humanity. And you're right, the law should guide us. But sometimes the law needs to evolve with the times." Judge Chen stiffened, his hands gripping the edges of the bench. Musk's words had struck a nerve. The judge had spent his entire career upholding the law, ensuring that those who broke it faced consequences. But Musk was making him question. Had he been so focused on enforcing the law that he had neglected the possibility that the law itself might need to be re-examined? Could this courtroom, this very moment, represent something bigger than just a fine? Could it be a sign of a system that needed to evolve? The tension in the room was suffocating. No one dared speak. No one dared move. And then, as if in response, To the silence, Elon did something that took everyone by surprise. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. "Judge, I know you're trying to make a point about the law," Elon said, his voice low but clear. "But I'm not here just to talk. I'm here to do something." With a few taps on his screen, Elon turned the phone toward the judge. On the screen was a live feed of SpaceX's latest project, a rocket launch that had just taken place moments before the hearing. The rocket soared into the sky, its engines burning bright, leaving a trail of fire behind it. Judge Chen's eyes widened in disbelief. What is this supposed to prove? Elon didn't answer right away. He allowed the silence to hang in the air. The image of the rocket burnished into everyone's mind. Finally he spoke, his voice unwavering. "This is proof of progress. This is the future. You may find me today, Judge. But this is something that cannot be stopped. This is something that will define the next generation of humans. You think a fine is going to change that?" The judge was taken aback. Musk's actions weren't just a challenge, they were a declaration. The world was changing, and the courtroom with all its rules and regulations couldn't stop it. And yet, as much as Judge Chen tried to maintain his composure, he couldn't ignore the growing sense of discomfort within him. How long could the law continue to act as a barrier to progress? Was it really just about enforcing the rules, or was there something more he needed to understand? "I'll pay the fine, Judge," Elon said, slipping his phone back into his pocket. "But the fine doesn't matter. What matters is the future. And no fine is going to change that." The courtroom buzzed with a mixture of shock and awe. Some spectators were clearly moved by Musk's boldness, while others were visibly uncomfortable with the way he had turned the courtroom into a stage for his personal vision. Judge Chen, however, remained stone-faced, but beneath his composed exterior, a storm of conflicting thoughts was raging. He had spent his life navigating the legal system, enforcing rules that were meant to keep order. But here was Musk, a man who seemed to disregard the very boundaries the judge had worked so hard to uphold. The images of the rocket launch still lingered in the judge's mind. Could Musk really be onto something? Was he right that the future could not be contained by laws that hadn't evolved? But Judge Chen's duty was clear. As much as Musk's words stirred something inside him, he was still the judge, and the law was still the law. "Mr. Musk," Judge Chen began, his voice steady but tinged with a new sense of gravitas, "you are not above the law. This fine will stand. There will be no special treatment, no exceptions for someone of your stature." Elon didn't flinch. "I never asked for special treatment, Judge," he replied calmly. "I'm just asking for understanding. The law isn't a roadblock, it's a tool. And sometimes it's a tool that needs to be updated." A wave of murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Was Musk really suggesting that the law should evolve just to accommodate him and his companies? Was that the message he wanted to send? The line between arrogance and genius had never been thinner. Judge Chen let out a quiet sigh, his eyes narrowing as he looked down at the papers in front of him. It was becoming increasingly clear that this case wasn't going to follow the typical path. He had seen countless defendants try to dodge their responsibilities, but none had done so with such confidence, such purpose. Elon Musk wasn't just challenging a fine, he was challenging the very system that had been in place for centuries. "This court is not here to debate the future, Mr. Musk," Judge Chen said, his voice firm once again. "This court is here to make decisions based on facts. And the fact is, your companies broke the law. The fine stands. There is no grand philosophical debate to be had here." Elon leaned forward slightly, his gaze unwavering. "The fact is," he replied, "that sometimes the law punishes the wrong people. It punishes those who are trying to make the world a better place, just because they don't fit within the boundaries that were set by those who came before them." Judge Chen's eyes flickered. Could there be some truth to Musk's words? He had spent so many years enforcing laws that he hadn't stopped to question them. But now, as the tension in the room reached a boiling point, he found himself wondering, had the law become too rigid? Was it holding back the very innovation that could shape the future? "Mr. Musk, your actions have consequences," Judge Chen said, his voice cold. "You may believe that you're above reproach, but that will not save you from the penalties of your actions. You're a businessman, not a philosopher." Elon sat back, his face still calm, but his eyes sparkled with a knowing look. "I'm not above reproach, Judge. But I'm not going to let this system hold me back. I'm not going to let a fine stop me from doing what needs to be done. The truth is, Judge, you're going to have to get used to people like me." A ripple of uncertainty washed over the room. There was no mistaking the confidence in Musk's words. No matter how hard Judge Chen tried to resist it, Musk was playing the game on his own terms, and it was beginning to look like the judge didn't have the pieces to beat him. Judge Chen gripped the edges of the bench, his knuckles turning white. He wanted to shout back at Musk, to remind him of his authority. But something deep within him, something he hadn't felt in years, was urging him to pause. Could it be possible that the world was changing in a way that he hadn't anticipated? That the laws, the system, the very structure of society was falling behind the ambitions of people like Musk? "I don't know what the future holds, Mr. Musk," Judge Chen finally said, his voice softer now, almost resigned. "But I do know this. You won't get away with defying the law, no matter how much you think you can." Elon stood up slowly, his eyes locked on Judge Chen. "You're right, Judge," he said, his voice low but filled with determination. "I won't defy the law, but I will change it. And I will make sure that the future is built, no matter who tries to stand in our way." The room was still. The weight of Elon's words hung in the air like an electric charge. Judge Chen had heard many defiant statements over the years, but none like this. None that suggested that the very laws he had spent his life enforcing might one day be obsolete. As the judge prepared to deliver his final ruling, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a fine. It was a turning point, a moment in history where the future was knocking at the door, and the question was whether the law was ready to open it. The courtroom had fallen into an uneasy silence. Musk's words lingered in the air, the weight of his defiance pressing down on everyone present. Judge Chen, though still sitting on his pedestal of authority, found himself grappling with an uncomfortable truth. What had begun as a straightforward legal case had evolved into something far more profound, something that transcended mere legalities. Musk had not only challenged the fine but had effectively challenged the very nature of the law itself. Judge Chen took a moment, collecting his thoughts. His mind raced with the implications of this hearing, of the future that Musk had spoken about with such conviction. Was he right? Was it possible that the law designed to protect society had become an obstacle to progress? The judge glanced down at the papers in front of him, trying to refocus on the task at hand. He had to deliver a verdict, but in his heart, he knew that no fine, no matter how large, would silence the man sitting across from him. Musk had already made his mark. His words, his presence, his very essence had left an indelible impression. "Mr. Musk," Judge Chen began, his voice steady but carrying a subtle tremor, "I find your arguments to be unconventional, but I cannot ignore the fact that your companies have consistently pushed the boundaries of what's possible. But there is one thing I must make clear. The law is not negotiable. And while I respect your achievements, that respect cannot shield you from the consequences of your actions." Elon didn't respond immediately. He only nodded, as if he had expected this, but it was clear that the fight was far from over. In that moment, Judge Chen realized that Musk wasn't simply playing a game of legal chess. He was crafting a legacy, one that, for better or worse, would force the world to rethink everything it thought it knew about business, innovation, and the law. "Your fine stands," Judge Chen continued, his voice firmer now. "But I am going to make one thing clear. This ruling is not a reflection of your potential, Mr. Musk. It is a reflection of the law as it stands today. If you feel that this fine is unjust, then it's up to you to change the system that imposed it." A ripple of astonishment swept through the courtroom. No one had expected the judge to acknowledge Musk's point so openly. For a moment it seemed as if the judge himself had become part of Musk's vision. But then, the reality of the situation settled back in. A fine was a fine, and the law was the law. No amount of philosophical discussion could change that. But Elon Musk wasn't interested in waiting for the law to catch up. He stood up slowly, locking eyes with Judge Chen as he did so. "Thank you, Judge," he said, his tone calm, yet filled with an unmistakable sense of resolve. "I'll pay the fine, of course, but you're right about one thing. The law isn't perfect. It needs to evolve, and that's exactly what we're going to do." The room fell silent once again. Judge Chen had just delivered a verdict, but it was clear that Musk had already won something far more valuable. He had shifted the conversation, changed the narrative. The fine, the legal ruling, even the courtroom itself were now secondary to the larger question that Musk had posed. What is the future of the law in a world that moves faster than the system can keep up with? Judge Chen felt a pang of uncertainty. Was he truly in control of this situation? Was the law he had spent his life defending still fit for the challenges that lay ahead? He had spent years judging cases, upholding the principles of the legal system, but now, with the eyes of the world upon him, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just witnessed the dawn of something far greater than any ruling could define. "I've heard your words, Mr. Musk," Judge Chen said, his voice now carrying a weight that was more than just legal. "But understand this. Changing the law is not something that can happen overnight. It's a long, arduous process, and it requires more than just bold ideas. It requires consensus. It requires compromise." Elon smiled slightly, a glint of humor in his eyes. "Judge, I never said it would happen overnight, but when people like me make waves, it forces the system to reconsider. And it's not just me, you know. The future is full of people pushing the limits. You're right about one thing. The law will have to evolve, whether it likes it or not." The tension in the room was palpable. Was this really the beginning of something bigger than just a legal case? Was the world watching the first cracks in a system that had been built on centuries of tradition? Or was it just another moment of defiance from someone who thought the rules didn't apply to him? Judge Chen wasn't sure, but one thing was clear. This case had become far more than a courtroom drama. It had become a confrontation between the past and the future, between the system that had served society for so long and the new generation that was determined to reshape it. And as Elon Musk turned to leave, his lawyers gathering their papers, the judge couldn't help but feel a sense of uncertainty creeping over him. This had been about a fine, about rules, but it had also been about something bigger, something that would force everyone to reconsider what they thought they knew about law, about power, and about progress. As the doors to the courtroom closed behind Musk, Judge Chen sat back in his chair. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like the one in control. He felt like a spectator, watching history unfold before him. The courtroom slowly emptied, but the questions that had been raised by Musk's words lingered like smoke in the air. People filed out, muttering among themselves, unsure of what they had just witnessed. What had started as a typical legal case had transformed into a powerful statement, one that would reverberate far beyond the walls of this courtroom. Judge Chen remained seated at his bench, staring at the space where Musk had stood just moments before. The image of the entrepreneur, calm and composed, speaking so confidently about the future of the law, was burned into his memory. Musk's words were like a mirror, reflecting back at him the very system he had spent his life protecting. A system that now seemed so rigid, so out of sync with the rapid pace of change. Is this what the future looks like? Judge Chen thought to himself. A future where the law is just another obstacle to overcome? A future where the system I've built my career around is obsolete? But even as these doubts crept into his mind, something else tugged at him, a small, persistent part of him that couldn't deny the power of Musk's message. Perhaps, just perhaps, it wasn't the law that needed to change, but the way people viewed it. Maybe the law didn't need to remain a static entity, frozen in time. Maybe it could evolve, grow, and adapt. The thought was unsettling. The law had always been about predictability, stability. It was the foundation upon which society had been built. And yet, here was Musk, suggesting that it should bend to accommodate innovation, that it should give way to progress, no matter how disruptive. As the judge gathered his belongings, the courtroom doors swung open, and his bailiff entered, breaking his train of thought. "Judge, you've got a call on line 1, the bailiff said, his voice snapping Judge Chen back into the present. The judge nodded, though his mind was still far away. "I'll take it in my chambers," he replied. As he made his way to his office, his thoughts were still consumed with the case. What had he really accomplished today? Had he upheld the law, or had he simply proven that the system was increasingly irrelevant in the face of people like Elon Musk? Was he upholding justice, or was he simply standing in the way of progress? The phone rang again as Judge Chen settled into his chair. He picked it up, his mind still racing with conflicting thoughts. "Judge Chen," he said, his voice distracted. "Judge," came the voice on the other end of the line. "I know you're dealing with a lot right now, but you need to hear this." The voice paused before continuing. "Musk's companies are already pushing for legislative changes. They've got powerful lobbyists working on drafting bills that could shift the very framework of the law." The weight of the statement hung heavy in the air. Judge Chen sat back in his chair, feeling a sense of foreboding creeping up his spine. This wasn't just about a fine anymore. This wasn't just about one man defying the system. This was the beginning of something much larger, something that could change the course of history. "Musk isn't waiting for the law to catch up," the voice on the other end continued. "He's making the law work for him. And if he succeeds, it could mean a fundamental shift in how we regulate businesses, how we regulate progress. This is bigger than anyone anticipated." The judge took a deep breath. His mind was racing, trying to process everything he had just heard. "I understand," he replied quietly, his voice tinged with a note of resignation. "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" "It is," the voice said, almost sympathetically. "And you may not be able to stop it." As the conversation ended, Judge Chen sat in silence, his mind churning with the possibilities. What had started as a simple case had now turned into a pivotal moment in history. Elon Musk's challenge had revealed cracks in the very foundation of the law. The system that had served society for centuries might no longer be enough to contain the rapid pace of change. The phone call had made one thing abundantly clear: Musk wasn't backing down. He was going to fight for his vision, and he had the resources to make it happen. And now, it seemed, the law would have to catch up to him. The question was no longer whether Musk would succeed, but how much of the world would have to change in order for him to do so. As Judge Chen looked out the window of his chambers, he realized that his role in all of this was far from over. He wasn't just a judge anymore. He was a witness to the shifting tides of history. And whether he liked it or not, he was part of the very system that Musk was aiming to change. And so, as the day drew to a close, Judge Chen sat there, knowing that the world outside was changing. He had seen the future today, and it was both exhilarating and terrifying. The law, as he knew it, had been put on notice. The future was coming, and it would not be denied. Elon Musk had made his mark, and whether the world was ready or not, he was going to make sure that his vision of the future would shape the course of history.